I'd like you to imagine for a moment where most of the renewable energy that we use here in the United States comes from. If you're like the rest of us, you probably pictured solar panels, but you'd be wrong. So, technology moguls like to push this idea that solar energy is the energy of the future, that solar panel roofs are the new, albeit expensive, norm. But for most Americans, this is not the case. According to this graph from the U.S. Energy Information Administration's website, EIA.gov, which I'll go ahead and pass out, hydroelectric power is the most prevalent renewable resource in 19 states, and wind power is the most prevalent renewable resource in 16 states. I feel like it's our responsibility to know what the resources that we use are and where those resources come from. So today I'd like to talk about them and the pros and cons that come with each. But before we start, there are a couple of things to note when we're talking about renewable resources. The first one being the term kinetic energy. So, according to Dr. Norman Meyer and Scott Spoolman, authors of Environmental Issues and Solutions, published in 2014, quote, kinetic energy is any energy associated with movement. So, whether that be the movement of the wind or the movement of the water, that's the kind of energy that's going on there. Another term to note, also taken from Environmental Issues and Solutions, is net energy yield. So, net energy yield is the amount of energy that we have left over from a source after you subtract the amount of energy that it takes to make that source available to us. So, say it takes 10 units of energy to make 70 units of energy from a hydroelectric generator. So you subtract 10 from 70 and you get a total net energy yield of 60 units of high quality energy. So now that we understand those two terms, the first source of renewable energy that I'd like to talk about today is hydropower. Hydropower is the energy created by the kinetic energy in moving water. It has relatively low production cost and high net energy yield and is the most widely used form of renewable energy. According to the Department of Energy's website, energy.gov, last accessed April 1st, 2020, quote, hydropower costs less than most energy sources. States like Idaho, Washington, and Oregon, that get the majority of their electricity from hydropower, have energy bills that are lower than the rest of the country. So, how does hydropower work? Well, dams use a reservoir of water, either natural or man made, to pump water through the dam, and this water spins a turbine that's connected to a generator that produces electricity. Scientists have also created a generator that uses the kinetic energy in the ocean's tides to produce electricity, and hydropower can be produced at a much smaller scale as well using micro hydropower generators that can be put in any moving body of water, whether it be a stream or a river, with relatively low environmental impact. Now, that brings me to the main disadvantage that hydropower can have. So, when dam and reservoir systems are built, the area around the dam floods, which can destroy natural wildlife habitat and can force people out of their homes. And then after a while, that the flooded vegetation in that area begins to rot and emits large amounts of the greenhouse gas methane. So, the next source of renewable energy that I'd like to talk about today is wind energy. Wind energy also has a high net energy yield and is one of the world's most rapidly growing forms of energy. According to a Stanford University paper published in the Journal of Geophysical Research in 2005, last accessed March 31st, 2020, even if only 20% of the potential global annual wind generated power were to be harnessed, it would supply, quote, 100% of the world's energy demand for all purposes and over 7 times the world's electricity needs. So, how does it work? Well, wind turbines are complex structures with over 8,000 different parts that use the kinetic energy in the wind to spin the turbine's blades, which are connected to a generator that produces the electricity. Not unlike hydropower, it's kind of the same idea. And recently, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has reported in their article, Renewable Energy on the Outer Continental Shelf, that wind farmers have been looking out to sea for places to put turbines. Offshore winds blow stronger and steadier, which would increase energy production significantly. And although this isn't an issue for the offshore turbines, the two biggest disadvantages to wind power are fluctuating wind speeds that can often change and can be unpredictable, and the noise and vision pollution produced by hundreds of these 300-foot tall structures. So today we focused on the use of hydro and wind energy, the two most used renewable resources in the United States and in the world. We defined kinetic energy and net energy yield and discussed the extensive use of hydroelectricity in the United States and of the potential of wind energy. We also learned about the possible negative effects that these two sources of energy could have on the environment. And lastly, I would like to point out that combined, these two powerful resources, while promising, currently only provide less than 15% of the world's energy production, according to the US Energy Information Administration. But as supply of fossil fuels dwindles, it's very likely that we're going to be coming to rely on these energy sources much more than we currently do. And so I feel that it's important to understand how we produce them, how energy efficient that production process is, and the negative environmental impacts that they can have. Thank you.